Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. Part of our business support program, actually our first one of 2025. We've had an incredibly busy start to the year, but as always, following your feedback and your needs, we're really pleased that the first one we're going to do today is a little bit of a dive into Ivalua, which is the Sizewell C Group procurement platform. Easy for me to say. Just as a quick overview, so you'll hear from myself. For those on the call who I've not met before, my name is Ashley Shorey-Mills. I'm the Sizewell C Supply Chain Engagement Director here at the Suffolk Chamber of Commerce. And we'll also have our colleague Ben from the Sizewell C commercial team who will run through Ivalua. And as always with our business support program, we've got the Q&A session at the end. Now, the Q&A is always one of the key parts of these because that's where you get the chance to ask the questions. As we always say, ask away. Any question you've got, we will happily attempt to answer it for you. If for any reason we can't answer anything, then of course we'll always come back to you with the answers at a later date. Hopefully there will be lots of questions to do with today's subject on Ivalua. But if you've got other related questions about the project, about procurement, or anything at all, then please do chuck it in the Q&A box and we'd love to hear from you. Just as a reminder on that, you've got two options on Teams. You've got chat, you've got Q&A. Please, as much as you can, keep the questions in the Q&A. That helps us to make sure we don't miss anything. But please do use the chat function, as I know you always do, to kind of introduce yourself, say hello. We always like to look back over. So particularly if you're a business that's listing today that has been awarded a contract recently or is currently looking to win work on Sizewell, then let us know in the chat, because it's always good to hear these good stories of local businesses winning work on this project. I was on site again yesterday, and you look out the window and you can see local and regional vans and businesses all over the place. So it's fantastic to see such success in these early days. Just as a reminder, on our business support program, we record these. This will then be hosted, on our website. And I'll show you whereabouts that's going to be a little later in the slides. And all of the slides that you'll see today that can be shared will be shared to everyone that is registered post the event. So please make as many notes as you want, but we will also share this by the end of the week with any links for anything that's discussed today. Just as a couple of quick reminders from me, first of all, fundamentally, ESG is the key to this project. They have to replicate what's happened at Hinckley. It's critical because the government is involved in funding and financing this, that we do this on time, on budget. But underneath that, it is important that this project is delivered doing the best it possibly can for the UK, and as part of that, for the East. So as many of you will know, the commitments that have been made in the East kind of fit within these ESG supply chain delivery goals, mainly being goal 1, which is to champion that UK content, but prioritise local and regional businesses as much as is practicable. So therefore, this is why we do these sessions, why we try and support through our role to make sure that we're helping the project deliver its supply chain delivery goals, but also actually that you as part of the supply chain can play your part in each of those 5 core areas. And as always, if you've got ideas and innovations in these areas, then we want to hear from you. And, from the very top, Sizewell C's strategic aims highlight this. It is, and it always is, and any of you that sit on our monthly, soon to be bi-monthly calls with Malcolm will know that fundamentally safety is the overriding priority, making sure that everyone that comes to work goes home that same day in the same way they came, nice and safe, healthy, fit, and ready for the following day of work. But of course, also that we need to make sure that Sizewell is built with a few best in class focuses, particularly around net zero, particularly around delivering on time, on budget, doing something different. And the way in which they will do all of these things whilst also working to the way the government wants this project to run is through that social value. And you'll see where I've highlighted at the bottom, it is not just a nice word that they've used. It's not just, we'll try and use locals. It is in everything they do. It is that golden thread that runs through. The businesses that are working on this project, the client themselves and their alliances, it's there. They have to be able to evidence the good they are doing, and part of that is by using local and regional firms. And as always, you know, we like to remind everyone, the region, as we call it, is those 6 counties of the east. So yes, we are Suffolk Chamber of Commerce. Suffolk is local spend, but regional spend is their Norfolk, Essex, Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire. We are there to represent all 6 of those counties. And our key theme is to ensure that we get you talking to the right people at the right time in the right way to help deliver on those commitments that Sizewell has made. And also then support you in making sure that you are as local as possible in your own supply chain, that you're doing your own bit of good to ensure that that legacy is felt as much as possible. But importantly, doing it in a way that doesn't hamper growth in other sectors, doesn't hamper your position as a business post Sizewell C construction. What we want to see is a supply chain that develops and grows off the back of Sizewell, but not, you know, Sizewell or bust. You know, not that everyone is then reliant on that single project for their income, for their the survival of their business. So sustainable, proportionate growth, ensuring that post Sizewell C, we've got huge opportunities still for businesses. And that's that commitment that I spoke about. So those 3 regional commitments, obviously we particularly care on the commitment in the east, that 4.4 billion to be spent in those 6 counties throughout construction. And many of you will have seen there's already hundreds of millions of pounds spent in this part of the world. Everything from very, very small, less than 6 people, true Suffolk SMEs, all the way up to larger contracts. You know, many of you will have seen on the videos that have been done, all the earthworks, which have been handled by Blackwells, who are an Essex-based contractor. It's fantastic to see the variety of businesses that are already starting to deliver and help Sizewell meet its commitment to spend 4.4 billion in the east. That's going to be a challenge. It is a big target, but every example we see from what's happening down at Hinckley in Somerset shows that actually that is possible to do. The economic report that was just released, I think last week, from Hinckley is already well exceeding 4.4 billion spent in their region, which included parts of South Wales. And I think we should use that as incredible optimism for what we've got coming in front of us. And as a reminder, you know, how do we help you? We sit in between the project, its alliance partners, its tier ones, and you as the local and regional supply chain. We're there to help educate and support you in understanding what it is you need to do to be ready for Sizewell, and also for Sizewell to understand what we've got. So consistently, we are working with multiple parts of the project to understand all the different sectors and types of businesses and types of skill sets they need to help unearth what local and regional businesses we've got that can help deliver on this project. And then increasingly, as Sizewell is now awarding more and more contracts, our engagement switches from the client, from the developer, onto those tier ones to help them start to understand how they adhere to their commitments that they have made as part of Sizewell's wider 4.4 billion commitment in this part of the world. So everything from health and safety to nuclear cultures to compliance issues to everything you can imagine, we are there to support you. Most important thing is we want to be able to understand what it is you need, what's going to help you win work on Sizewell. And if it doesn't help you win work on Sizewell, but it helps you win work on other projects, then that's a good thing. That's part of that legacy, raising the bar, raising the tide for all businesses in the East. And increasingly, we're getting more and more questions around funding and training and things that are going to be needed to support businesses. We want to hear from you. And I'll touch on the portals a little later after Ben's presentation to talk about the work there. And as a final thing, the bottom, that's vitally important, is celebrate successes. You know, we work very, very hard to get you to that front door, to be able to talk to the project. And we know many, many businesses are now able to work, whether they are direct with Sizewell or working for other contractors. We want to be able to celebrate those. So any of you that are on the call today, if you are working on site, have a chat with us. Let us know your experiences, good and bad. Let us celebrate those successes and feed in and support you, hand-holding through any of the challenges that you're having, because we want to continue to celebrate all of these good news stories to help showcase to other businesses that this really is happening and there is an opportunity here. Right, there we go. So at this point, I will hand over to Ben Pritchard, who will take over from now and talk you through Ivalua. Ben.
Well, morning all. Yeah, so as Ashley sort of highlighted, I will talk you through Ivalua, but a little bit first about sort of Sizewell, sort of generally sort of how we are currently procuring and looking to procure over the future months. Next slide, please, Beth. Just to give you sort of a little bit about me. So I'm a senior commercial manager at Sizewell, and I sit in the sort of central function, and I look after sort of governance and improvements. I've been at Sizewell since September, so not that long, but quite long in some ways, considering sort of how many new people we see arriving day to day. I've been, as you can see there, sort of in and around the construction industry for a very long time, as my sort of growing beard and hair show. I've done a lot in infrastructure. I started in nuclear decommissioning, worked at Magnox on every site except Sizewell A, actually, and did a lot in North Wales to start with, ended up at Bradwell, ended up in this region, but I've also had quite a varied sort of career. I've done a lot in commercial, retrofit, historic refurbishment, and been lucky enough to spend some time in sort of Canada, the Middle East. But at the heart of that, I've always sort of believed in sort of collaboration, in sort of ensuring that construction can create value, because when it's done right, it creates value for everyone involved. When it's done wrong and done horribly, as we sometimes see in the news, it can sort of ruin things. So we're all about here at Sizewell trying to do that, to achieve those ambitious, lofty goals that we have as an organisation, but also, as Ashley's pointed out there, really support SMEs in the East, in Wales, in the North, and generally across the UK to grow. But again, as Ashley stated, the importance is that it's sustainable, that it's a lasting legacy, and that you outlast Sizewell wherever possible. Next slide, please. So just sort of, again, just to talk through sort of what we're trying to do at Sizewell and what we're hopefully doing more and more as you get involved with our procurements. Our procurements are generally sort of into 3 stages. You have the expression of interest stage, the pre-qualification stage, and the ITT stage. We've done a lot of work recently, and you'll start seeing more and more of it to remove duplications between the stage. But that EOI that you see through Compete For is all about just giving you an understanding of what the opportunity is. Where required, we might ask some questions around minimum requirements just to make sure that it's suitable for you as an organisation, and that's managed through Compete For, really trying to sort of make that a nice, simple process. Once that's done, if you're invited then to the next stage, to the pre-qual stage, this is where sort of Ivalua starts kicking in, and that PQQ is really a focus on sort of SQEPness. Are you suitably qualified to compete the work? Standard requirements across all opportunities, where specific requirements based on scope where necessary. So really trying to sort of understand, is your organisation sort of built to achieve the goals that we have? Then we move on to the ITT, and that's where sort of, we really sort of delve into the detail of how you deliver the scope, how we sort of, ensure that value is created. That's where we start focusing on those ESG goals, start to understand how you can support in delivering, whether it be increased UK content, whether it's improving sort of the educational requirements that we have, or helping us sort of achieve that sort of net zero ambition of ours by reducing sort of carbon on your project, utilising sort of either, innovative products, innovative designs, whatever it may be, however it fits within sort of the ESG sort of opportunities that we have. But really sort of trying to make sure that that procurement process, that there's a nice sort of golden thread through it, there is a minimal repetition throughout it, and a real sort of focus on sort of delivering sort of value for everyone involved throughout. Next slide, please, Beth. So Compete For is sort of the place to go, that window, that shop window that we have initially. So Compete For, we have our Sizewell C portal within that, and that's the place to go for most of the information regarding procurement opportunities at Sizewell. Opportunities for the alliances as well, when they come up, they'll be there as well, and the rest of the project, everything can be found here. So when a opportunity and an award is published, it all gets captured here. So you get an understanding of sort of what's coming, hopefully not just direct from Sizewell, but also via our tier ones. Next slide, please, Beth. So award information. So, and I know Ashley has sort of potentially better information than is on the Compete For website, but we are trying to improve sort of the quality of the data that we provide. But we have the map on the Compete For website that gives an idea of sort of where in the various regions that some of our awardees are, again, so that you have an idea of where to go, maybe not to contract directly to us, but how that tier 2, tier 3 opportunities might come. It's sort of a real focus for us now moving forward in improving how we sort of collect this data, but also share this data, become as sort of transparent as possible to make sure that the information heading out into the market is correct, it's up to date, and it gives everyone sort of the best opportunity to make best use of the opportunity that Sizewell is. Next slide, please. So if you're not au fait with Compete For yet, so Compete For captures our future opportunities. It gives you an opportunity to search utilizing keywords, you know, Sizewell C, what have you, things like that. You can also create email alerts based on those criteria. So, you know, do make sure that you do that so that you don't have to constantly be logging into the portal. You can get those sort of emails. Compete For is also used by a lot of other infrastructure projects, so it's sort of good, not just for Sizewell, but, you know, if you're interested in some of the other projects sort of across the UK, then this is a good portal for you to get involved with, get to understand how that works. Next slide, please. So when we do send out an opportunity, it always looks at something like this. It gives you an idea of what it is. So this is sort of an example of one that went out possibly a couple of months ago now for main catering. It gives an opportunity, an idea of what it is. So this is a service where we have an idea we're comfortable with. We'll give a rough estimated contract value. The description will give you an idea of a little bit about what Sizewell is, what the selection process is, but also sort of, you know, again, what the scope is, just a further understanding what that is. Sometimes we attach where we are able to, sort of documentation that fills that out. Then you'll, following sort of this, you sort of click the button to say you're interested, and you go through the sort of the question process. At the moment, the sort of standard template has 5 or 6 questions, I think, very focused on sanctions, stuff like that, just so that we can understand sort of, you know, some of the things that are very important to us to understand, whether sort of either they have happened, haven't happened, and if they have happened, what sort of mitigating circumstances have you put in place to try and ensure that they don't happen again. You know, if there are any sort of minimum requirements, whether it be in terms of sort of size of organisation, specific sort of requirements around any certifications or requirements that we do have to enable you to be able to tell the work, we will do our best to make sure that these are captured here, so that, again, so that it's well known, well clear, if there's time and opportunity for you to go out and sort of get them, or to sort of go, this isn't for me. So as much as we want to sort of make sure that everyone is capable of bidding for everything, there are certain things where you can't because of the nature of the project. So we make sure that we're as upfront as possible about those type of things. Next slide, please. There are certain things that are more standard than others. So we look for an understanding of what your sort of quality management, environmental management, and occupational health systems are. So if you do have, and they are certified, your 9001, 14001, 45001, they are obviously sort of good to have, support it. They won't always be sort of a requirement. You can sort of demonstrate that you have systems that achieve these for certain projects, for certain procurement activities within the project, but obviously these do help. What we're also looking to do is, where we can, because the Alliance is sort of looking to utilise construction align and things like that, if you have a certified common assessment standard and stuff like that, that'll do, and we're looking to sort of map our pre-qual against it, so that we can understand, again, trying to reduce duplication wherever possible, and we are sort of generally looking at sort of the how we best utilise the data within our systems to to minimize the amount of times you have to answer the same question, provide the same data to us, and stuff like that. Modern slavery statement, code of conduct, your DE&I strategy, all of these type of things. Again, sort of, we'll make sure that we're asking these questions where it is sort of relevant and prevalent to the project, to the procurement activity that you're bidding at. However, these are all things really that, if you want to grow as an organization, they're probably important to you anyway. Similarly with the ISOs, you might not have one, but, where utilised properly, they're a real great sort of support to help you create the business, create the foundations that you require to grow. Last month, I think it was, Sizewell passed our PAS 2080 audit all around sort of carbon management. So we're really sort of proud to sort of be on that sort of journey towards sort of net zero. And again, we do not expect our supply chain to sort of follow us in terms of getting that sort of certification or having all of the requirements for PAS 2080. But we do see it as an important requirement to sort of understand sort of, how much carbon we're creating. So we are sort of rolling out tools to sort of capture our sort of carbon output, to understand and measure where we are sort of creating carbon, how we can reduce it. So again, not necessarily sort of a requirement, but in today's world, definitely something that I think most organizations should be pushing towards, trying to understand what their sort of, sort of carbon impact is and how we can reduce it. And it's very much sort of operationally as well. So, we're not looking at sort of the ins and outs just yet, but, we have things like an ambition in 2030 to be diesel free as a project that we're looking at. So all of these type of things are our ambitions. Hopefully we can support sort of our supply chain in coming along with us. Cybersecurity. We would recommend sort of a minimum of cyber essentials, just generally to anyone out there. I think it's come out in the news this morning that the latest cyber attacks have cost Marks and Spencer's over £1 billion. So it's obviously sort of a part of the world for organisations that is very important to understand how you're protecting yourselves, protecting data, that type of stuff. If we do go out with anything that is of a sensitive nature, that has sort of the export control requirements and all these sort of additional things, again, we'll make sure that that's really clear. And generally sort of speaking, the way we sort of manage it, we'll sort of take it out of sort of day-to-day sort of data hosting and things like that. So all of these things we look at, but generally, again, this isn't just something that is important for us at Sizewell. These are things that if you want to continue to grow and sort of see that sort of legacy post Sizewell are probably important for all organisations. And I'm sure there's nothing here that you haven't already thought about or thinking of sort of implementing anytime soon anyway. Next slide, please. So just sort of generally, before we sort of dive into a little bit around Ivalua. So if you have the Common Assessment Standard or equivalent issued by safety schemes in procurement accredited body, and you've done construction line, all these type of things, these are things that we're starting to sort of understand how they map to our requirements, and we're utilising more and more and more just to simplify the process. So we would sort of recommend that you look at that again, because it's not just for Sizewell, more and more of the construction industry in general accept that, so it will support your sort of simplification of pre-qualification requirements across the industry. Make sure you sign up for Compete For, so that you can keep an eye on upcoming procurement activities. Our tender event schedule, so with support from Ashley and sort of others, we're getting better at collecting the data of our future requirements, collecting the data of our alliances once they're up and running properly. We'll be collecting that and making sure that they're published in appropriate areas, in areas that are visible, and in areas that give sort of everyone a good opportunity to understand what the next 3, 6, hopefully 12 or longer months look like. Join on our bi-monthly supply chain briefings with sort of Malcolm and the team. They're a real good opportunity to understand where the project is, where the project's going, and understand some of the key initiatives that we are looking at. ensure cyber essentials as a minimum, and consider which ISO certificates would enhance your business in general. So, not just your 9,000, 14,000, and 45,001. There's a whole host out there. PAS 2080, 56,000 suite around innovation are a great way of embedding innovation in an organization. You've got so many around sort of net zero. There's a PAS on MMC being released sort of this week. So there's so much out there that just helps sort of create foundations within organizations to support you grow. When done right, they're not just a tick box exercise. So you've not come here to hear me rant about the pros and cons of ISO certificates. So we'll move on. Next slide, please, Ben. So Ivalua. I'll try not to go too quickly, but I'll go at a reasonable sort of pace, so to not sort of bore you with the ins and outs. But obviously you need to register first. So next slide, please, Beth. So within your browser, ideally Microsoft Edge works slightly better than Google Chrome, I'm told, with Ivalua. So when you go to the address, you click on New Supplier, Register Now, and that will send you to the registration page. Next slide, please, Beth. When you're in there, just as you would with any portal, really, you provide the company name, address, make sure that you add the country. This is a sort of an EDF portal, so there are sort of certain requirements outside of the UK. So we need the address just to make sure that the Ivalua portal sort of follows the workflows to provide you with the sort of the requirements of a UK business. Next slide, please. Contact information. So you can sort of at a later date sort of add more to the team, but this will be sort of whoever's leading it. Make sure that you provide your contact email, do your password. As sort of normal these days, you need sort of a variety of capitals, smalls, digits, and sort of at least an 8-character password. And once you do that, next slide, please. You complete the registration, you will get emailed a security key, you put that into the box, and then a pop-up window will confirm your registration, pardon me, and you'll get an email sent provided to the email address with further instructions what to do, just to show, yes, you're registered, this is how you get in, and what have you. So the registration process is hopefully fairly straightforward. If you do first log in to the page and it's in French, you can find sort of the button in the top corner that lets you turn it into English. But hopefully, other than that, it's a fairly straightforward process. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So just read terms and conditions. So you're in, so you've done sort of the compete for, you've had an email saying, yeah, great. Thanks for expressing an interest. Here is sort of the pre-qualification for this package. Next slide, please. So you should get some direct sort of invites from us as part of that process, moving from EOI to PQQ, but also from PQQ to ITT. When we down select, we'll sort of make sure that we tell you, we'll provide you sort of some feedback where appropriate. But if once you're in and you can't find it, you can search through what you've been invited to, where you can within the portal, sorry, under sort of invitations to apply, you click on the title of PQQ then next to that little pencil, and that'll create a pop-up that brings you in. But one of the first things you'll have to do before you can see the detail is that you'll need to accept the NDA. So that little screenshot in the bottom right will just show you that it sort of comes up and says it allows you to download the NDA and say that you accept the NDA. At the moment, that is with sort of every package, but we're looking just to simplify that sort of understanding that some organizations probably have multiple NDAs with us potentially, so how can we best do that? If you don't accept the NDA, you can't see any of the details just because of sort of the type of organization that we are. Once you're in the Apply tab, you can choose to participate. If you don't say you will, then obviously you can't, but just do that as soon as possible. The instructions to tender and instructions to pre-qual will give sort of a detail around sort of what we expect in terms of timescales around that. Next slide, please. When you're in the portal and responding to a PQQ or an IT within the questionnaire tab, if you click on access questionnaire, you'll see all of the sort of questions we ask. Within the overview of that, you'll see sort of how it's sort of set out. So our PQQ is standard along 9 to 10 sections, with sort of company compliance first, then there's sort of an element of quality, an element of health and safety. These all have different tabs, different levels of questions where required. So each question now for the pre-QQ is sort of well structured in terms of whether you just fill out the box to answer, whether it's yes or no, if it requires an attachment in any way. So for the questions around certifications, for example, it's very clear as to whether you attach a document or not. And there'll be a little box in that question that allows you to do it. And it will always be a mandatory requirement for that question where we require that. So we make sure that it's as clear, hopefully, as possible as to what we need at every stage. The ITT isn't quite structured in the same way historically, but we've got an update coming in the next couple of weeks that will create a very similar sort of structure within Ivalua, where the question is clear, the requirements are clear. There'll be well-defined page limits where appropriate, and again, sort of it'll be really sort of straightforward to see and understand where the documents should be uploaded, where they are sort of always required. But we're sort of doing a lot so within our templates and within the system, just to make all of that a lot clearer. Next slide, please. So the instructions document, as well as PQQ, it's really important for both the pre-qual and the ITT that it's not just what you see in Ivalua. The instructions documents that will come out with these procurement activities are structured in a manner where we tell you as much as we can. We are trying to be more and more transparent in what our requirements are. It gives an idea of what the scoring sort of is, what the procurement schedule is, and it'll give sort of instructions around what our expectations are, how TQs work, our time that we have to sort of reply. If you sort of email someone, that could get lost in the ether, that could sort of not count. Make sure that these communications are happening within the portal. There should be more than one person to every procurement event, so you're more likely to get a quick response. We'll do our best to turn around a response to all TQs within sort of 5 to 7 working days, or at least let you know why we can't do that, because it requires us to go and find more information. But the instructions more and more will provide much greater transparency around sort of what good looks like for the questions, what the weightings are for these questions, and a real sort of understanding throughout the process. So it's really important as you run through the questionnaires that you don't just focus on sort of what Ivalua is showing you, but also have a look at those instruction documents. Make sure that you're sort of reading them side by side for the full picture. And if there are any sort of digressions, anything that doesn't quite sort of align and make sense, do make sure to ask the question. It's not done on purpose. These things sometimes happen, but always sort of ask the question if you're unsure about anything. Next slide, please. So again, this is a little bit more of an insight into what our instructions now look like. So here's sort of a snapshot of those instructions, sort of talking about sort of the company information section, telling you what the questions are, how we're scoring them. These aren't scored, these are just for information, but this is sort of consistent as a template throughout the process. We also will start telling you more and more if there are any questions that are sort of, requirement, pass fail type things, if for any sort of specific, maybe for the marine works requires certain certifications, we'll sort of really sort of highlight that if you can't provide these certifications, this is a pass fail for the whole PQQ, and sort of really sort of emphasize where those type of things are. And we'll also give an idea of what the requirements are to sort of pass to the next stage, whether that be that we're looking for a short list of sort of 5-6 companies, or whether they were saying sort of, a minimum score of 80%, 50%, 60%, whatever it would be, is what is required to move to the ITT. This is all sort of being really well sort of established within the instructions to the pre-qual and to the tender, so that everything is hopefully really transparent and clear to the supply chain. Next question, not yet. Next slide, please. Once you have responded, once you sort of get to that stage that you're happy, you will be required to validate and submit your proposal. Make sure that you've applied to the lots if that is appropriate. If there's a multi-lot sort of procurement, and we might sort of be asking the same question sort of 3 times just because of the way the system is designed and built, but do make sure that you are doing that properly, that you've answered all the questions in the questionnaire tab, run through it, that sort of overview. It does show you sort of, if there's 10 questions, it'll say 10 out of 10 once all of that is completed. Run through it, make sure that where documents have been requested, that they're uploaded, and then you can click on the validate and submit proposal. Once you do that, as with all these systems, it does check that you've not pressed it by accident. So once you're happy, do submit it. Once you have submitted it, it is submitted. You cannot sort of modify it. But if you sort of realise after the fact, I forgot something, I missed something, then you can always sort of create a new proposal. But you can sort of simplify that by copying the last submitted proposal, and sort of go that way. We can only see that last submitted proposal, so we won't actually know if any of this has happened. We can only see sort of that last one, and this is why it's important. If the deadline is sort of midday on the Friday, don't wait till 11:50 to start doing it, as much as sort of that sometimes is sort of required. We would recommend that you try and sort of give yourself a quiet Friday morning, maybe by doing it on the Thursday. Next slide, please. So this isn't sort of a one-person sort of system either. So you can sort of create sort of a team within there. So you can add team members, you can add further contact details, and sort of allows them then to sort of have their own login details to support filling out sort of the questions, to ask questions, to do whatever. So you can have multiple people within any sort of team in Ivalua. Next slide, please. Price list, especially in the ITT, is obviously sort of quite important, and will be a mandatory requirement. And that depends on what type of procurement it is, how that is provided by us. We might give you sort of a detailed activity schedule. We might give you sort of a detailed sort of bill of quantities, whatever that you will fill out, or we might sort of ask you to do something sort of directly within the system in terms of just sort of filling out that lump sum. But just make sure that, again, and if it is a detailed activity schedule, please do make sure that whatever that says and whatever you put in the box for the lump sum are the same, just so that we can make sure that everything sort of lines up. Next slide, please. There you go. I think bang on time, wasn't it? 10:40 I was supposed to finish.
That's perfect. Thank you, Ben.
So it was a whistle-stop tour of sort of Ivalua briefly, but also some of the principles of procurement that we are looking to, or have embedded, are embedding, and are looking to embed at Sizewell. So questions, Ash?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. We have got a few. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. I did that thing. But no, thank you, Ben. I appreciate that, because, like I say, some of the feedback we're seeing more and more businesses now get to that PQQ and also ITT stage, and actually it's a new system for lots of people. So helping as many as possible, kind of, it's not the first time they see it when they get that email is so important. So Thank you very much for that. And I think it's an important one. One of the points Ben made around, keeping communications inside Ivalua is so important. We do get from businesses lots of questions when they're at the PQQ stage, which is lovely. We want to hear from you, but actually, once you're at PQQ, you've got that direct relationship with the project. Make sure your questions are through that route, because it is so important. Right, we have got a few questions, so I'm going to try and do them in order in which they were asked. So bear with, that is the bottom one, isn't it? So if a company is potentially a tier 2, and they see an opportunity for a tier 1, should that company who thinks they could be a suitable tier 2 still respond to the expression of interest on compete for? Ben, your take on that?
Yeah, it can do. I guess it depends on how much on the fence you are as to, it might be a case that you're just low on confidence, but you're actually perfect for the opportunity. So, but also the opportunity for you to reach out to sort of query the team, ask Ashley. I wouldn't make any decision without having a conversation with someone. And that could be potentially with, if you think you are a tier 2, that might be because you have a tier 1 in mind already to work with, to collaborate with. So, there's a conversation there maybe as well as us. So, it depends. Maybe sat firmly on the fence with my answer.
No, it is something we get asked a lot, and I think it does depend on the package, and again, the level of what you can provide. Recently the marine shared services one went out, and it's such a variety of skills and skill set that's required on that package that actually, the project's looking at someone who can run the marine shared services, but actually we've encouraged those who can maybe provide 1 or 2 of the 10 services to make sure they respond as well. So I think it does take package to package. Yeah. What I would suggest to lots of businesses, if you've never had that opportunity to respond to something, actually, if there's a package where you could realistically perform quite a big role at tier 2, I would encourage you to respond, because at least also you're practicing that first step, because then the next time an opportunity comes up that maybe is directly for you, actually you've already practiced. So we'd always encourage that engagement.
We are obviously sort of looking at sort of where appropriate, and where we think the greatest opportunities are to do more and more meet the buyer type events. So they're great opportunities before we would get to compete for, before we finalise the scope, as to sort of give opportunity for you to talk to us at Sizewell directly, but also to see who's in the room, to understand, are there some partnerships out there? It could be that some sort of joint venture of 3 or 4 tier 2s is actually a better solution than 1 tier 1. So, I will never say that there isn't sort of, there should never be a predetermined answer. It's all about sort of creating value, and we'll try and not second guess what that looks like.
Yeah, and as many of you know, that's kind of particularly a key part of our role, is ensuring, as I said at the start, that the project, as well as the tier 1s, kind of understand that local supply chain and build that up. So that's there. So, right, next question that we had, do we have to register with Compete For via the Sizewell site? So just to be clear, Mike, so the reason we say, and Ben said it as well earlier, all businesses should register on Compete For, even those that are maybe tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, that are potentially never actually going to bid for work. The reason we say that is because that way you can see the activities that are going on. You can see the packages of work that are coming up. And exactly as we've just outlined, you can then identify packages of work where you could perform a role within. So we do say to everyone, certainly if you're local and regional businesses, you're signing up with us. The reason you've got the invites today, for example, is because you signed up on Sizewell C Supply Chain.co.uk, our local and regional engagement portal. Brilliant. That's where we do all of our work. Compete For as an opportunity platform, we do tell everyone still register, because at least you can see the activities, you can see that awarded data, you can see that timeline of opportunities, and then keep an eye on everything that's going on. There's no such thing as too much information. And for the sake of another 10, 15 minutes to get registered, I would say 100% it is very important. And I think Ben's point he made earlier as well, don't forget, with Compete For, you're not signing up to Compete For just for Sizewell. You're signing up to Compete For, which actually means if an opportunity happens to come along at Heathrow, or HS2 or anything else that utilizes Compete For, you're going to be kind of given the heads up on that as well. So it's not a bad thing. Right, next question that we have, bear with. Just waiting for the system to catch up with me. A rough outline of project timeline would be much appreciated, even prior to these appearing on Compete For, as enable us to prepare teams well in advance. Is this possible? Okay, so Henry, we are working very, very closely with the project on how we can continue to open up that timeline. So what is on Compete For is generally about a 3 to 6 month look ahead. It is due an update, and it is planned to be update very, very soon. One of the reasons for the delay to the update is about making sure it is as detailed as possible, following our feedback into the project, which is the feedback we get from yourselves. So yes, we understand, things move. And what the project is desperately trying to do is make sure it is as accurate as possible. Ben, on his example of Compete For, already brought up catering. On the last update on catering, it said they were going to go to market in the autumn. That's been accelerated to spring. This project in advance of FID is still moving around an awful lot. And for anyone who's been on site will understand the complexity and size of this project. Things happen. So agility, as we always say, is so important in this project for every part of the supply chain, but even within the client delivery itself. So we are working with them. What I would always say to everyone, keep an eye on Compete For, but also talk to us. What we are doing in the background is then working at that beyond 6 months look to understand what's happening in a year, in 18 months. We're even talking to parts of the project that are not due on site for 7 years to help understand what they're going to need. Because for certain businesses, you need it tomorrow, you could be there tomorrow. For other businesses, you need it in 7 years, it's going to take you a couple of years to prepare. So we're constantly trying to do that work across the project. So if you're an individual business with a need, then obviously, just speak to us, and we will, where we can, give you that as information and give you as much information as we can to help you prepare. What obviously is vitally important is attending these webinars, because the whole purpose of a lot of the webinar suite that we've done around the business support program is all the things you can be doing today in advance of you actually being needed on site to perform the role which you do as a business. Right, just bear with me. Just wait for another question. Oh, go on, Ben. Yeah, go for it.
Add a couple of things to that. Sort of, obviously, as you sort of hinted towards, sort of, as we move towards FID and as the sort of alliances start to take place and sort of get contracted, we're still a maturing organisation in some terms of understanding what those requirements are, but that's getting much more nailed down. But also, if you've been to some of Malcolm's sort of calls recently, he will talk to you about sort of a move towards sort of category management and strategic sourcing with certain things as well, which is giving a really sort of strong long-term sort of view on our requirement for certain things. Sort of, a focus on sort of plant and material to start with, but then what else, can FM fit in there? What else can fit within that sort of, almost continual sort of requirement throughout the project? So we are looking, as we sort of mature as an organisation, mature as an understanding of what our requirements are, to be better. And we're really sort of looking at how we can sort of incentivise and contractualise some of the requirements within the alliance and our tier ones to give us as good and as strong a 12-month look ahead as possible as well. So again, that we're not just sort of, doing it ourselves, but we're sort of encouraging it sort of throughout our supply chain as well.
Fantastic. Question is obviously, where can you see the tender event schedule? So I'll show a screenshot in a second where it is, but that's on Compete For. How do we join the bi-monthly supply chain briefings from Charlotte? So if you go onto either our website or also Compete For, you will see all of the future dates for these in our event page, and therefore you can sign up there. They're all on Teams, so you can sign up and it'll automatically go into your diary. And so you don't just sign up once and you get all of them because of the individual nature of them. So you sign up for each one. So you can now sign up for the next 3, which is July, September and November. So we recommend, just get yourself signed up as early as possible, drop in your diary, and then that way you're then there ready for the bi-monthlies. Adam's asked the question. I think this will be one for you, Ben. So if people have previously used Ivalua for another user or client, will the same login and access be usable for the Sizewell C opportunities?
Don't know.
Okay. There you go. One for us to take away.
What used it for EDF or the group? I think so is the answer. But again, you know, if you register for the EOI, you will get a link to sort of the prequel. So if the link doesn't work, then that'll tell you if you need to re-register, and hopefully it won't be long. If you're obviously re-registered already, the link will just let you sort of open up straight away. So don't know is the honest answer. It should do. However, you know, the registration process hopefully won't take too long if it doesn't.
Okay. And I'll dig into that, Adam, as well, to see if there's anything else we can find out, just in case. Do you have to be invited to specific events, or can you access all on Compete For? Okay, so with events, obviously, again, any kind of public-facing events, we will always put them on our website, and if they're relevant as well, onto Compete For. And you will find increasingly over time, more and more events will appear on both platforms. A lot of our events, though, that we host are very specific to sectors or packages of work. So, for example, tomorrow we have a webinar around the temporary works design for the Civil Works Alliance. So what we have done is we have gone through our database of businesses, looked at all those that are relevant to design, and invited them to this. There would be no point us inviting businesses that don't do design to come to that. So for a lot of the time, whether it is sector specific or geographically specific, we are inviting. This is one of the reasons why, and I'll say it again later probably, we say your portal entries are so important. Making sure you're accurate and with your information you give us, because that helps us invite you to either the right events, introduce you to the right tier ones and the right commercial teams. You know, it's very much about the more info you can give us, the better we can support you. We are hopeful that very soon we will be back out on the road doing a few more general open invite events to give a chance for businesses to engage with each other, engage with the project, engage with people like ourselves. So watch the space on this one. Stay signed up to the newsletter, stay signed up to the portals, and if in doubt, just get in touch with us. Is it possible to get feedback if a company's been unsuccessful at the expression of interest stage? We've been unsuccessful at EOI for a consultancy contract, but in the process, but not seems particularly transparent. Ben, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, we are trying to be more transparent, try and support organisations to sort of learn where possible. We've also simplified the EOI stage massively as well, just to sort of, you know, take a lot of the noise away that was previously within that Compete For process, sometimes accidentally, but just sort of making it really clear as to sort of why it is. So there might be sort of specific reasons depending on what the package is that we can't provide feedback, but we are encouraging and we are supporting by creating sort of, you know, process and templates that allow for feedback to be provided at every stage. Yeah. So, you know, again, that's one of those things that as we sort of mature as an organisation, we'll hopefully get much better at. If there's a specific package, you can sort of, you know, ask me or Ash, and we'll sort of try and find more details, but no promises that we can.
Yeah, and that's and Nick and to the rest of the audience, that's a big thing that we're working closely with the project on, because one of the biggest things we want to be able to do is help you understand how you can be better. So if you are successful, we still want to help you get better. But if you're unsuccessful, then actually that's even more important, so that you can understand what do you need to do? What actions can you take? Because again, hopefully it will help you on Sizewell in the future, but it will help you on other projects probably as well. And sometimes some of the businesses that are missing out, it does purely come down to size and experience. And other times it might be more practical stuff that you can do. We're working closely to make sure that that happens. Will all the current PQQs via Compete For transfer to Ivalua? So Adam, just to be clear, only expressions of interest are on Compete For. Everything Sizewell procurement related after expression of interest on Compete For moves as it goes to PQQ to Ivalua. If other businesses, so the tier ones that may also or will also start putting expressions of interest on Compete For, they may well use a different platform. may use Ivalua, may use a different platform, but the expressions of interest is what is on Compete For. So in essence, nothing needs to transfer across. It is a process that Sizewell or their commercial teams will take of, right, we've got an expression of interest, 10 companies have responded. How many of them do we want to take forward to PQQ? Right, send them the link, get them onto Ivalua. That's what will happen. So there's nothing more for you to do apart from either wait for the feedback to say yes or no, and then to act accordingly on Ivalua. Tom has made a question. So how do we get an opportunity to meet tier ones face to face, identify the procurement strategy and upcoming opportunities? Tom, that is our job to support you. So I think I'll answer properly, but if you've got individual examples, that's where you email us, whether it's me, Ian, Karim, whoever within the team, just email us with the types of things that you would particularly want to talk to tier ones about. But what we're increasingly doing now, as I mentioned earlier, Sizewell, as much activity has been happening, there's still been limited amounts of contracts awarded. That is now accelerating at pace and will continue to through this summer and into the autumn in particular. So as the project is identifying its tier ones, we are then working very, very closely with the commercial leads and those tier ones to identify then where the opportunities are for local businesses. Because all of the tier ones will make commitments through their contracts to use local firms at different levels. And that will be contractualized. And that information then comes to us, which means then we can support them. So it is about us working very, very closely with those tier ones, spotting where the opportunities are for locals to come in, helping open up the eyes of the tier ones as to what is possible locally, and then potentially holding events, doing introductions. Sometimes those intros will come from us. Sometimes those intros will come direct from the tier one who will contact you. Lots and lots of different ways. As mentioned earlier, what we are also currently looking at is different ways to create engagement events that actually are a bit more generic. So not even meet the buyer, even more generic than that, where the tier ones then have that opportunity. So watch this space on that one. There's a few ideas floating around, but key thing, stay in touch with us, Tom, the same message to anyone else. Keep us informed as to what you do and how you work. Keep the portal updated, and then we can best represent you. Will the Suffolk Chamber host events to link tier 3s and 4s so they can join JV on future packages of work? We will happily support that. We haven't planned on necessarily hosting events to do with that. What we have done though, and a little plug for what I'll say later, but if you look at our website, we've previously done a webinar on joint ventures. So very light touch, but go and have a look. If you're interested in understanding some of the legal complexities around joint ventures and collaborations, then we did it with Burkitt's 2 years ago now. So have a little look at that. But also we can support and facilitate and convene a discussion if that's needed. Certainly, I think what would be very important, Robert, with regards to your question, is identifying that tier one. Because what you will also find in the examples that we're already seeing from the project is that the tier ones will actually handhold through that process as well. So it's, what's really pleasing from us as a chamber is the very proactive approach Sizewell and its tier ones are taking to mentoring and hand-holding smaller businesses that are probably mostly compliant, but on the right journey to being fully compliant, and actually hand-holding them and supporting them through. We've got loads of good examples of that already. But certainly if you've got a specific example, Robert, again, reach out to myself or anyone within the team, and we can have a look at how we can best support you. Will recruitment needs go through this system or have a different process? Sanchia, so the plans for later this year are to create a recruitment framework and resourcing framework. I would certainly suggest it is incredibly likely to start through Compete For because it will be competitive procurement. But the detail around that framework are still being worked. And it is a question we get asked regularly. The project does know that it is something that it wants to create. It wants to expand its existing supplier framework to support the increased needs for people on this project. So again, watch this space, stay engaged, and the anticipation is through the summer that we should have more detail where the Employment Affairs Unit will be going to market for a framework on recruitment. Question here. So morning, Ash and Ben. The published list of procurement overview packages and Compete For are very helpful, but the reference numbers don't align to the published opportunity details when they're listed on Compete For. Can you explain how the published list converts to the actual Compete For opportunity? I'll let you go first, Ben.
So we realised that we've not always been at our best when it comes to sort of data integrity. Sometimes things change. Sometimes there's good reason for that. What was maybe on one list doesn't quite end up being exactly what that was. So ends up under a slightly different reference. Sometimes it's just a sort of a potentially simple typo or what have you. But we are looking at improving sort of the systems that we have internally to manage some of these processes, to sort of enable us to be a lot more consistent and a lot clearer in terms of what gets sent out.
Yeah, and Mark, very timely. It's literally been an email exchange I've been on today. So what Ben is saying is true. The project again is aware, and we're the chamber. We're separate to this, but we do see it from all sides, and it is an incredibly busy site that is ramping up at a rate of knots. These things take time to bed in. We've got 12 years to build this thing, but that they are aware of making things as simple and as clean and clear as possible, and we're supporting that. And again, that's where I say it all the time. Your feedback, we don't mind a little moan to us, because that helps us feed stuff back into the project, which ultimately is then as a learning lesson for them to then see how we can improve. Not everything can be changed, not everything can be improved, but we genuinely have a developer here that wants to make things better. So keep that feedback coming to us.
Just on that, so I have a sort of a long list of things that I have done or am doing to hopefully sort of really embed sort of excellence in procurement at Sizewell across the patch. Try and really sort of embed those principles in everything we do. And as good as I think I am, additional feedback is always welcome. So yes, I have a view of the world that's based on sort of feedback that I have had, but always sort of really keen to sort of understand and hear from as many people as possible, because it is a very complex project with lots of different requirements. MEH, civil, site, it's all sort of quite, it's multiple projects and programs within the project, all require slightly different things. So, when I get feedback from one place, it might be wrong for the other. So I'm always keen to get as much feedback as possible, please. And Ashley always enjoys moaning at me. So, if he's got some useful stuff to have a moan about, that's an added bonus.
See, I do tell you all that I do feed this stuff back in, and I promise I do. A question was asked in the chat. We picked it up. So, is it possible to access a list of all existing tier ones? So, David, the contract award data, which I will show in a second on a future slide on the final couple that I'll show, but there's a list of every single contract that has been awarded since 2015. And like I say, it is due for an update imminently. It is something we are chasing, but again, it's just going through the assurance, because I think they've done 3 versions of the contract award data and timeline in 2024, Sizewell. And what we're working with them now is through those first 3 versions, there was improvements made, and we're now kind of going, right, learning that, how do we make it as perfect as possible for everyone? So again, you can view it there, and I'll show exactly where it is in a second, as well as the map that Ben flashed up earlier. But also, if in doubt, just contact us. Just genuinely give us a shout. We can always try and help you if need be. A couple of other questions come in, which is fantastic. Will requirements related to marketing and communications be on Compete 4? So dependent on what aspect, but yes is the short answer, Rebecca, if it's direct with the project. So Sizewell is about to go to market for its FM contractor. It may well have gone live whilst we've been online this morning, because it was loaded live last night onto Compete 4, and it takes about 24 hours for it to go live. So within the FM contractor will be everything around not everything, I shouldn't say, but elements of marketing, communications, reprographics, things like that. They will fall under the FM contract. So again, it's where we spoke of earlier, is that what Sizewell are going for is a single FM provider that will manage the whole network when it comes to facilities management, and then we'll bring in best in class to work underneath them. So again, what we will be now doing is working closely with the project and its potential and eventual tier one to work out how we engage the supply chain. Because the FM contract is everything from printing a poster to pest control to cleaning to landscape management. And actually, if you look at the examples from Hinckley, it's minor civils works, it's drainage works, it's a wide ranging spec. So there will be opportunities, Rebecca. Stay engaged. Of course, what is also probably even more prevalent for this type of service, but also professional services more broadly, is that indirect that we often speak about as a chamber. It's not just about winning contracts direct with Sizewell for this. It is the impact that Sizewell will have on the local business community. So you will find increasingly businesses coming to work on Sizewell that then need these services as well. And you know, if I'm a contractor that's maybe based in the Midlands, but because of expertise that I have, for example, I get the chance to work on Sizewell, I'm going to have to evidence good in Suffolk as part of my contract. So therefore, I'm going to be looking as that contractor at how can I do more spend in Suffolk? Well, as your own business, that's where you'll be able to link this in as well. So importantly, we're already seeing more and more businesses come forward saying, oh, have you got this type of service? Have you got that type of service that actually is not directly related to Sizewell, but indirectly as part of it? Just see if there's, I think there was one other question, wasn't there, from Ellie. Morning. If we don't win a tender, what other ways can we support Sizewell? I think, Ellie, if you don't win that first tender, again, we'll use the examples of Hinckley, it doesn't mean it's a no forever. Obviously, changes from package to package. But what we know is that whether there's frameworks or whether there's contracts, there's always going to be evolution and development within the contracts that are awarded. If you know, let's say, pick up that terrible example, but if you dig holes and Sizewell has finished digging holes, then obviously there is no longer an opportunity. What you all know as part of the audience, certainly as the local and regional supply chain, is that actually we're still then using your information for other opportunities. You know, Sizewell want to get a legacy from their project. So as many of you, certainly if we've got people on the call today that are Suffolk-based landscape companies, will know that recently we sent an opportunity out to all of you for Drax. Because, you know, the gas plant that's gas energy plant that's being built in they needed landscape. So they approached us to utilise the Sizewell database. So there's always going to be other opportunities that we will want to use and help promote for you. But when it comes to Sizewell, if you miss out on that opportunity, it doesn't mean forever it's no. It might get more difficult dependent on the package. But again, talk to us and we can maybe help see where those other future opportunities are likely to come, both again, directly, but also indirectly as a result of this project.
I think, you know, just, yeah, Hinckley have more people on site now than ever before. You know, it's easy to think that Sizewell is very busy now, but it's going to be very busy and busier for a number of years now. So yeah, as Ash says, you know, there's quite a long timeline on some of these opportunities, and sort of, you know, it's not just about winning work with us, it's about winning work sort of around the region and around the sort of the supply chain we create, and we're really going to sort of, you know, do everything we can to be transparent on those tier one opportunities.
Another question's coming. So just curious on access to site, the ACA, for example. I know you need to be vetted and invited as a visitor. Is there a way you can get a pass, or is it simply through getting sponsored by firms? At the moment, Harrison, yeah, you will only be invited on site if you are being invited by tier one, someone from Sizewell, if there's a relevance. That's mainly down to, as Ben just said, the rapid increase in people. The priority for the employment affairs and vetting team is getting contractors who are actively on site vetted. It is a common bit of feedback we get that it is potentially a barrier to some local businesses to win work on site, because unless you're vetted, which can take 4 to 6 weeks, you know, then how do you get on site? Because sometimes the schedule means you need to be on site within a week. So there is, again, it's a bit of a six of one, half a dozen other, trying to work closely with the project, how better we address this. That is one of the ideas of the strategic frameworks that are coming out and the commodity strategy works, which we are working incredibly closely with the commercial and ESG teams on, because again, the more you can pre-vet, you can pre-qualify through things like frameworks, the better it is to be able to manage that. What you've got to remember with a project like this is it's not just about how many people it's got on site, it's how many vehicles. This project is incredibly stringent on its vehicle numbers, on its movements of its people. So it's not as simple as that needs doing, go and do it. There's so many considerations to take, which is one of the reasons why I know the Employment Affairs Unit would love to have a bigger building, even bigger than what they've got now, to be able to take more people through and pre-vet as many as possible. That's not always there. But through our work and hopefully through your own business development work and your own proactivity, that you're then able to engage with the tier ones, engage with parts of the project so that they want to speak to you, they need to speak to you, and they will invite you. And increasingly, that might not be to site. Many of you have seen the press around Orwell Logistics Parks. There's Orwell Logistics Park. There's office space there now, and there's other locations as well. So again, it may well be that even when you do have these meetings, you're not going to site, because actually, do you need to be on site? The whole purpose of Sizewell, again, learning from Hinckley, is you only go to site if you need to be on site because of the nature. We all live locally. We know it. It's not the easiest place always to get to. We need to limit the impact on the local communities. So actually taking someone to Orwell Logistics Park or the offices in London or doing it virtual is probably a better thing sometimes anyway.
Yeah, we are. So there is quite a lot of work on sort of how we can sort of manage that mobilisation phase in general. So there's a lot of work to simplify that and make sure that everybody understands it, so that we are giving adequate time to sort of to site, but also in our tenders, that we make it really clear. Because if you've never worked at Sizewell before, people can be a little bit overly ambitious about how quickly they can do things. So we're just trying to make it very clear as to sort of, what the realistic timescales are with some of these things. And there are also certain things, make sure you've got your CSCS cards and sort of certain things like that as well, just so, that'll speed up some of the sort of, non-nuclear sort of requirements to get on site as well.
And again, little plug, if you didn't attend, I think it was last spring, we did one with Jackie from the Employment Affairs Unit vetting team around getting access to site. So giving you a bit of a heads up, because as Ben said, if you actually want to do as much as you can to speed that process up, then there are things you could go away now. You could get your workforce CSCS cards, for example. So again, if you haven't viewed it and you'd be interested in that, go back onto the website. Again, I'll show you a link in a second. You can review that webinar with Jackie and the team and actually start to see, is there things as a business we can do today? And that's the same with all of those webinars that we've done, trying to give you a little bit of a heads up, which hopefully make the whole process that little bit smoother later. Right, we'll stop there. Loads of questions. Thank you, everyone. If any others do come through and we think we can quickly answer them, we will obviously reference them, but obviously conscious on time, we'll do a last couple of quick slides. So couple of portals just to remind everyone: local and regional businesses in the East, Sizewell C Supply Chain.co.uk. That is our platform. That is where we do all of our engagement work from. There's a website with loads and loads and loads of information on. Please continue to view it. You will see you've got links to compete for on there. You'll have news and stories, but importantly, you'll get the information on the events that are coming up that are available, public, there to go. And also that support tab. And you'll see on the support tab, the top two, the top one is the all supplier webinars that Malcolm Dare, that we've been doing monthly and now about to go to bi-monthly. You will see all previous slides on there from those sessions, slides that are obviously available to share. You'll appreciate with the security on the site, some of the images are not always able to, which is why we encourage you to come along, because that drone footage, for example, and some of the imagery is always super impressive to see. So you can always view them. And then the next option down is that business support program. And that's where all of the webinars, including today's, are hosted for you to go back and view them if you wish to, both the slides, but also the actual recordings. And then increasingly, and there's going to be an update soon to this, but you'll see lots of links to funding and resources and skills and practices and all these things. As much information as we can, we're putting into that single place for you. And of course, that's also then where the supply chain database backs off of. So you as a business who have registered, that's where you log into and keep your details up to date for us. Help us help you as much as we can. Oh, there we go. Sorry. And there's just a quick list of all of the various webinars that we have done. And you will see, if I take, for example, where's it gone? The one that I just referenced, where's it gone? Oh, I can't find it now. I've gone blind for a moment, but you will see on there loads of different opportunities, loads of different support that help you get yourself as ready as possible for what is coming. All of these areas, so, you know, Ben mentioned cybersecurity. You will see probably 18 months ago now why cybersecurity matters to an energy project. We talked about this because it's things you can do as a business, so that therefore when Sizewell talk to you, it's not a, yeah, we'll do that, which they would accept if they showed direction of travel. But if you've already got this stuff sorted, you already got it in practice. And again, it's not just the certificate, it's actually evidencing that it's in process and that you do these things. That's important. Then actually you tick that box, you're one less worry, hassle, consideration for Sizewell to have. So many different subjects, all different types of matter has been discussed. So please make sure you have a view. Then you've also got Compete For. Ben already touched on this earlier, but you'll see the area I've circled bottom left. So on the homepage, as well as the awardee information on that map, if you scroll down the homepage slightly, you will see the procurement overview and the awarded contracts list. They open as an Excel PDF, and you will see on there. So yes, it is due an update. Anytime soon it will be, and obviously we will alert everyone when that does happen, but you will see everything that is planned to come in the next 3 to 6 months, but also those awarded contracts, and like I said, it's imminently to be updated. So for the people who wanted to see where you find the tier ones, that's where you find them. Want to see where those opportunities are coming, that's where they will be. And of course, as we always ask, you know, you on the call here today, spread the word. You know, we are there to support Sizewell and you, but we can't do this alone. There is going to be organizations, there is going to be sector groups, there is going to be other businesses that are not talking to us. You know, we have 2,800 businesses on our portal. That's fantastic. There are thousands of businesses in the East. So please continue to help us spread the word as much as you can. If you sit in sector groups, if you host quarterly networking briefings with certain groups, and you want one of our team to come along and talk to the audience to talk about what's happening at Sizewell and how they can play a part, just reach out. We will happily come and talk to anyone across the region to make sure that we can help everyone understand how to get involved in this fantastic project. And that's that final point, you know, re-sharing the old slide, but with that bit at the bottom, tell us what you need. Today's webinar is because lots of people were saying, Ivalua, it's a bit new, Ash, I've heard it, what does it mean, etc., etc. So make sure, tell us if there's things you want us to deliver, if there's support that you need that you don't know if we're currently doing it or how to find it, just reach out to the team and we will do as much as we possibly can to help you. I just suddenly thought one other key thing, because we are getting it too often now. With Compete For and Ivalua, have a chat with your IT provider around your spam. Increasingly now, we are seeing businesses who are getting informed through the Compete For automated that they have either been unsuccessful, but also we've had a couple of examples where businesses have been successful and they've not responded because their spam folders have picked things up. So whether you're just going to go in with your IT departments or your IT support offices that, don't ignore everything that says Compete For or Ivalua, however you want to do it. But I would suggest it's a very sensible thing to go away and do, because the last thing you want to do is miss out on an opportunity just because your spam folder picks something up. So a little bit of advice, because it is something we do get quite often now where businesses say they haven't got feedback. And actually, through a bit of digging, they did get feedback 6 weeks ago to say they've been unsuccessful or whatever. So final little thing I forgot to mention earlier, so I think it's important. But yes, outside of that, tell us what you need and we will do as much as we can. And then, check out the website. We've got another webinar in July, which is going to be on conformant and fraudulent and suspect items. Quality on a project like Sizewell is critical. And we already know from some of the early feedback we're getting on businesses that have been unsuccessful getting from PQQ to ITT or ITT to contract award, is that the quality aspect and understanding of the quality expectations on a project like Sizewell is an area which local businesses are not as experienced and potentially falling down. So actually understanding how your own supply chain, your own way of working as a business is affected by suspect items and making sure that conformity runs completely through your whole supply chain is key. So you can sign up for that one now. That's in July and that's on our website. But if there's no other questions, which I don't think there is, then I will say thank you very much to everyone for attending today. Like I said, by the end of the week, the slides and the recording of this will be on our website and you'll get an email with various bits and pieces. But I thank you. I'll let you all enjoy your day and I'll catch up with you soon. Thank you very much.